Okay, so to finish off today, I'd like to explain the messages and also encourage you to do some more exploration. So there are a bunch of objects or modules that you could use here in Jamoma to add effects to the things you're doing. So what I'd like to do is to encourage you to add in some other modules. You can chain them together if you like. You can do what we've done here, which is to make a send out to another module, feed it back in here, so that you can control how much of each effect is coming through. A whole bunch of things that you could do here. So there's modules like degrade, delay, equalize, filter. It's a nice filter, limiter, multi-tap delay, noise gate, saturation, spectral shift, tremolo, and there's a VST wrapper, and there's also a AU audio unit wrapper. So please now experiment with these other modules and build yourself a different patch that does some different and interesting things that you might think about starting to think what a performance would sound like or look like when you're using these. Okay, now we've talked about these message formats, these slashes and so on, and there are some other messages here that are quite easy to use that you could add to this patch very easily. So when we know that we are loading a sound file, then we can, let's just hook this up to here, open these sound files, /sound file /open with the name of the sound file here, and we can also play those. So I've got this little thing, I'm not going to explain it, you can have a look at it and work out what's going on here. But what this allows me to do now is if I start playing this audio file, then I can just send a message here to load a different one and with a delay of 10 milliseconds play the sound file. So these messages are in the same format as all of the other ones we've been looking at, but they open a sound file. Okay, so let's look at the format of these messages. You're going to make a new object here, and all of these messages are essentially in the format of what's called open sound control. So let's have a look here, and you'll see there's a bunch of different open sound control objects. One that we'll need immediately is this one called OSC route. So I'm just going to select that, select in an empty space, and then option click the object in order to open the help file. That's true for any max object. The delay object, for instance, option click OSC route. And you'll see in here lots telling you about what you can do, the format of the messages, etc. You want to think about these as addresses. So like on your computer, you have a hard drive, and on the hard drive you have My Files, and then you have a document folder, and then you might have schoolwork folder, etc., etc. These are like those messages. So they have the first part of the address here is Apple, the second part is Pi, and then we want 1, 2, or 3 of them, etc. And you'll see that down here, in these OSC route objects, we can look for the first part of the address. So if we were going to go somewhere, we might say, well, is it in Phoenix or Tempe or Scottsdale or, you know, wherever, Gilbert. And so the first part of the address is here, /Apple or /Orange or maybe somewhere else, /Banana, right? So it's going to separate out these messages immediately. And then we put another OSC object to look for the second part of this, in this case Pi, you can see here, Apple, Pi, and then it's going to print some material out here. 1, 2, 3. So let's go back here, and this is where you start to understand why each of these modules has a different name. So let me see if we put in here GP sampler 02. Actually, let's start by going /GP sampler 01. Okay. Now let's take one of these sound file objects. I'm going to duplicate that one, take it over here, and I'm going to add to the beginning of this. So the first part of this message is going to be GP sampler 01 and then /sound file, etc., etc. Put that in there. Now let's just put a message box here so we can see what comes out of this first output, which, as you can see there, is related to the subaddress GP sampler 01. Put that in there and hit that. And you'll see that everything after GP sampler 01, sound file open, etc. comes out. So let's just delete that. Let's make another copy of this. But we're going to change this to 02 and plug this into here. Now we're going to plug the output of GP sampler 01 into here and the output of the route for GP sampler 02 into here. And now when we click that, it will go ahead, except that it doesn't for some reason. Let's just have a quick look. Here we go, problem solving on the fly. Let's just double check that message format. Okay, that looks right to me, and I know that if I feed that in here it works. So maybe it's a different format here, which I didn't check. So let's take bucket 02 here. We'll drag that and dump it on here. Now, again, we should have just loaded a new file. Let's try doing it manually. Oh, but it's printed in the Max window. Yes, there we go. Open. Okay, so maybe it's not sound file, it's just open here. So let's try that. And send that to 1. Is this one? Yes, there we go, bucket 02. Okay, oh, no, I think it did work before, but anyway, that's fine. Let's get rid of this sound file, and we will now load bucket 02. Yes, there we go. Okay, so that has now opened those sound files. So what you can see is if I wanted, for instance, let's use Technobeat 01, and I copy this into a duplication of this, open, put that in there. Could now send open bucket 2, this is going to 1 here, so that's already open, or open Technobeat, and now that's open. Now the point of this is that we can redirect these arguments all over our patch, but the beauty of Open Sound Control is that you could be sending these arguments over Open Sound Control from any other computer in the world. So you could have an ensemble for your performance where you send messages to each other, where one computer might be responsible for loading the samples, another for controlling what's going on with the sample, the looping points, for instance, another being the mix of the effects, etc. And you can share or network all of these messages. So the beauty is that each of these modules is set up essentially already as a networkable object, and that we will talk about more.